So tonight I wanted to just speak a little bit about wheels, just a little bit. I put a lot of pictures in there on the email that came out. This, of course, is the mask for painting a row style wheel. You can buy these. You used to be able to buy them, plastic. They're very difficult to use. Maybe the one that John has, he made himself and trimmed it and formed it out of something a little heavier duty than the very lightweight plastic. That's something you might buy a bunch of prepackaged donuts in at the grocery store. So the first wheel out that I talk about, because they're wire wheels back from the very earliest times. The TC, of course, uses 19-inch wire wheels, very, very tall wheels. And then we come to the TD, which is just a wholesale change. The suspension, everything about the TD was so different from the TC other than the powertrain, and even some of that's changed, but the engine stays the same. So they came out with a TD, which did not have any ventilated, they were not ventilated wheels, they were solid wheels, much like you'd see on a Y-type. I know everyone's seen one of those. So right away, they got holes in them. Was that for ventilation so the brakes would cool faster? Probably. Was it to make them lighter? Probably not, although that does happen, and that's a good thing. So everybody was so upset that the TD did not have wire wheels that when they came out with a TF in '54, they went back and offered the wire wheels again, as well as the disc wheels. And that's a 5-lug pattern with half-inch nuts that hold it on, half 20 American thread. After about 1951, the first bunch of TDs out used a BSF thread on the wheels, but maybe because so many were coming to this country and there were probably, I don't know. Anyway, they switched to American thread. So that's the only American thread on the TD for a long time. Anyway, with the MGA, when that came out, that was again, we had 15-inch wire wheels and a disc wheel. Then at the introduction of the 1600 MGA, the crown on the center of the wheel was a little greater so that it would clear the calipers instead of the drum brakes. Although it seems to me you can use them interchangeably. So on those wheels, I don't know if it's then, I think it's then, but maybe it's before then, the holes in the wheels, someone wrote to remind me of this yesterday, the holes in the wheels change from elliptical to round, or from round to elliptical, one or the other. Then in 1959, Dunlop, I had a completely different way to hold the wheel on. It wasn't, well, it was a spinner, but it wasn't a spline. It was a fast way of changing the wheels at the racetrack, where you had 4 pegs out of the back of the wheel, four pegs. And so you'd knock the spinner off and the wheel would literally just fall off the car. And then when you went to put another wheel on, you put it on and turned it less than 90 degrees, it would fall in to the hub where the pins were, put the spinner back on, and it was a really quick change for pit stops during racing. So those wheels are unusual. Then beginning with the MGB, we still have wire wheels, 14-inch now, and 14-inch disc wheels that look not unlike the MGA wheels. They're not very attractive, but to each his own. And then in 1970, we end up with the row style wheels, and they're called row style because they were made by Rubery Owen, R-O. So that's why I always spell it with a capital R, capital O, style, R-O style. But they're reduced to still a capitalized word with the second O being small and often pronounced raw style wheels, again, made by Rubery Owen. And they use those right up until the end. but they also had LE wheels that came out in 79 and 80, and that looks like that Triumph Stag wheel. Those took a little wider rim. All the tires prior to that, my understanding, is a 5.5 inch width on the tire on all the rims prior to that. But by the time you get up to the LE, those are wider. Those are wider tires. I don't know if they're 6 inch. I can't remember. Then right in the middle there, they had the MGB GT V8 73 through 76. And also the company made a run green cars with a bunch of striping on them and everything, and called them the Jubilee Edition, 50th anniversary of the production of the car. Now those are not for sale in this country, although Don Bridger had one at MG Bits and Spares in Jonesboro, Arkansas. I think that's gone. I think somebody else has that now. Anyway, those wheels, which were pictured, were also 5.5 inch, but they looked very unusual. Midgets used a different kind of disc wheel for a short time also, but the later midgets, certainly 70 through 79, used that row style wheel. You can get any number of aftermarket wheels. I had a picture of the Mini Light and the broken Mini Light when I sent it out that was just a one-off. I've never seen one break like that. I never saw one break like that before, nor have I seen one break like that since. Just a bizarre thing. But anyway, there are lots of other wheels. The bottom line is you want the lightest wheel that you can get. Think of walking around with a belt, and on the belt is 20 pounds of weight. Okay, it's on your belt, but it's on a shoulder harness. You're walking around 20 pounds of weight. But you separate those into two 10-pound pieces and tie those, duct tape those on the front of your shoes, and oh boy, you really, really know that you got an extra 10 pounds on your feet. Kind of the same with wheels and tires. You want the lightest wheels and tires that you can get. Disc wheels are lighter than wire wheels. That's why they went to them. They're also stronger, but they don't have the classic look. So it's a yin and a yang. I had a customer one time who'd taken his row style wheels and put all this extra stuff on them. My gosh, those things had to weigh 40 pounds a piece. And when you're spinning those things around, trying to accelerate, it takes an awful lot of energy to spin those things up and a lot of braking to slow them down. So you always want to get the narrowest tires that you can to fit on your car. And so like a Vredestein, they make a real nice tire right now. It's available from Tire Rack and everybody else. For the MGB and the MGA both, I believe, in the 14 and the 15 inch, and that's got a nice pattern to it. It handles well. Nothing's as nice as easy for me to say. Nothing is as nice as those old Michelin XZXs. You can still buy those from Coker Tire. They're probably $500 a piece. So you can, for $2,000, you can get yourself set up. But geez, for $400, you can get a set of 4 tires you're used to. You don't need that 5th tire. Just take the best one that you've got, put it on as the spare. The lugs changed in the MGA. That's a 4.5 inch pattern. So there's a lot of wheels that'll fit an MG. Although where it bolts on and where the tire runs in relation to where it bolts on is an issue. So not all 4.5 inch rims fit. I think there was a Volvo or a Saab wheel that people were using as a spare for a while because it took up less room in the trunk. Anyway, the wheel lugs have always been 1/2 inch, except the MGA. Those are 7/16. But of course, by the time you go to try to put one of those wheels, a disc wheel on an MGB be, the holes are usually wallowed out enough that it'll take it. But that brings up yet another issue, and that is wheel balance. Our wheels are not center balanced. They're balanced off the lug nuts. So in the row style wheel, for instance, the hole's there. It isn't always exactly where it should be. So if you want to do a really good balance job, you've got to have a used hub or someone who can balance it off the lugs with that 4.5-inch pattern. That's about it. I don't think there's much more to say, but I'm up and willing to answer whatever I can or receive any more information that anyone out there may have about wheels.
John,
Yes.
what's the rule of thumb when you're hammering back a wire wheel back on? I mean, when do you know when the wheel's tight?
Well, it doesn't matter how tight you get it because it's going to loosen up to where it remains. You can. Some people say you can over tighten them, but I usually use a dead blow. That's one of my new videos. It's not up. I got a wheel wrench from another person. It's a really slick wheel wrench, really long, and it's a
big wooden thing.
Yep. And anyway, if you're using a dead blow hammer, I've got a dead blow hammer with a plastic face to it, and I just smack the spinner on, and then when the car's down on the ground, where you don't have to hold the tire when you're smacking the spinner, you smack it a couple more times until it just barely moves each time. I mean, how I can't tell you the torque or anything, but the wheels will tighten during operation. They don't loosen; they will tighten. So it's hard to get them too tight. The problem is if you get them on way too tight. The problem is getting them off. So.
Yeah. All right.
Anybody else with a comment about wheels?
I have a question on steel wheels for an MG midget.
Yeah.
Got a 76 that I'm trying to make look like the last midget on your string of pictures before you got to the wrench there on your what you put out. I'm trying to put some steel wheels. I got wire wheels right now. So I've got a multitude of questions. Is there any like modern steel wheel that might fit an MG midget? Like whether it's a small Nissan car or some other car that I could try to find that might be able to match that 4-bolt pattern?
I don't know. I just plain don't know.
Okay.
And those studs are 3/8. So when you take the tire store and the kid's out there with an impact gun and he goes to rattle those things back on again, snap. We used to sell those every summer, and they're so horrible. It takes so long to have to change them. You take the hub off, and oh my gosh, all this stuff. Anyway.
I also have another question. I've got wire wheels now, and I know that those axles are shorter than the steel wheel axle would be. Can I get away with just putting spacers in once I find a wheel that fits, a steel wheel that fits? Can I put a 1/2-inch spacer in or something?
The disc wheel diff is wider.
Okay.
So you can, if you got wire wheels, yes, you can. That's what I did on my daughter's 73 BGT.
Okay.
We built the whole rear axle, got it all done, got it all up in the car, it's all bolted up, it's all got new rust washers inside it, and it's all set to go, and I go to put the wheels on, and they go too far in, the tires are rubbing the inner part of the inner wheel arch. And it's like, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? So I took it back off, took the hubs off, got real long studs, and went to the machine shop and had them make some aluminum spacer plates. You can buy them, but I couldn't find some that I liked, so that I just had 3/4-inch ones made. And I don't know if that same offset carries through on the midget or not, but on the T types and the Bs, or on the Bs and the As, it's 3/4 of an inch on a side. But of course, if you find an aftermarket wheel, the plane that is attached and where the tire runs, that's not going to be the same as your midget wheel. So, so who knows what you might have to do.
There might be a lot of, but the spacer is not something I should be worried safety wise about.
No, it's just fine.
And I might be able to change the studs to a larger stud, perhaps.
You can find a longer 3/8 stud. You can certainly find a longer 1/2 inch stud. Oh my gosh, that's easy. You can find.
Sure. I was thinking that maybe if I went with a larger, different aftermarket or other manufacturer wheel, I might get larger studs and longer studs.
You could, but then you'd have to drill out the hub and put the studs in, and you want to have somebody that's really doing that very, very carefully, or else the wheel is going to go around. I mean, yeah. So
Okay.
Much,
Thank you.
by much, but by too much.
John, what's that number of the Michelin tire you referred to?
The Michelin tire, the really excellent one back in the day, was a Michelin XZX.
Thank you.
And it was a 165/14. So we had a customer who was drop dead gorgeous. She was just beautiful. And she had a 77 Chartreuse MGB. And I called her and said it was done, and she saw her run down, pick it up. Well, she ran down. She had a bodysuit on. And when she came in the shop, she was glistening and caught everyone's eye. So there were a couple of people on the front counter at that time, customers. And I'm telling this one guy, he says, well, what kind of tire should I buy? And I said, Michelin XZX 165/14. And after she left, she went out to get in her car and drove away. I looked down to see what he'd written down, and it was Michelin SEX. And I thought, yep, I can understand why you wrote that down, but it's XZX.
John, I bought those Vredesteins. I love those tires.
Those are great. Those are great. Well, they're modern manufacturers. And
They're from Holland. The price is right, and they hold the road excellent.
That's what I got on my MGA. How long ago did you buy them?
Last year.
How much they cost for a set of 4?
Oh my God, I think they were like maybe $135 or $140 a piece.
All right.
I had to wait because it was during COVID, right at the end of COVID.
Okay.
And they're from Holland.
Right.
And I got them on both of my Subarus too. But I got the all-weather ones on the Subarus. If you want a quiet tire for on the highway for your everyday car, by far the best.
Speaking of that, John,
John,
I got. Oh, Tom Snook, yes.
Consumer Reports arrived this. It's got an article on tires. The top-rated ultra-high performance all-season tire is the Vredestein Hyper Track all-season, $146.
Very interesting.
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I just looked at my Consumer Reports too, Thomas, and
Okay.
I just put this past fall Vredesteins on both the MGA and the TD, and that's the second go around for both of them. Unless you're just making it for looks. I mean, I love the looks of the XZX, but Vredestein's the answer.
Hey, John, I put the XZXs on my TD a few years back, and I just looked up on Coker where I bought them, and they're currently $166 a piece.
Okay, all right.
So not as bad as you might expect.
Okay, maybe I was thinking of those red line TR6 tires.
It's the XAS that are expensive ones now.
Okay. And I was surprised, you get Michelins and you expect you're gonna see, you know, made in France or made in USA. They're made in Serbia.
Okay, hey,
So I think Coker's business model is they buy the molds from the companies when the discontinue making these tires, and then they take them to wherever labor's cheap and they've got their factory and all that. So they're Michelin's, but they're Serbian tires.
okay,
John, Serbia is on the way to China. It's in the general direction, so, you know. But, yeah.
Another source of those tires
Anyway,
is a
John,
Longstone tire in England.
what's that, Fred?
A Longstone tire in England sells the XZX, and they're very reasonably priced. I buy most of my tires from Longstone now.
From England.
Yeah.
And even with the shipping, it's a better deal than going to Tire Rack or something.
Yes.
Okay,
John, this is Doug. I have an MGC and I have wire wheels on the chrome wire wheels on it, 15-inch chrome wire wheels. And I remember it was Memorial Day 2015. I decided to go for a drive, and not many people on the road. And I came up to an intersection, made a left-hand turn. Was just starting to make a left-hand turn, but the light turned, and I applied the brakes, and I hear I felt a little bit of a thud on the passenger side of the car, and a little bit of a downward motion. And so I thought, oh no, not a flat tire. So I completed the turn, and the car handled okay, and I pulled off on a side street, and I got out and I looked down at the tire, and I said, oh no, it's not a flat tire. So it was something else. And I think a ball joint or tie rod end or something with suspension. But the tire was rubbing a little bit against the inner wheel well there. So I didn't want to drive it with a big heavy engine on an MGC, you know, so I had to call a flatbed. And so it was hauled to the garage, which is fortunately 1 block away from where I keep the car in my own rental garage. So the next day they called me up and said, we found out what's wrong with your car. So if you could just listen to this, John.
can't hear it, but
Can you hear that?
no.
Oh, well,
So when you're checking wire wheels, this is what Doug can tell you too. If you grab the wire wheel at 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock and try to shake it, of course it shouldn't move. It should be one with the hub, one with the car. But when all the spokes get loose, the whole thing just wobbles all over the place. And if you use a little tiny hammer to tunk each spoke on a GC, there's 72 spokes.
right.
You tunk each one, and all 72 will thud because they're loose. Very interesting.
Well, what they said was, you got a bunch of broken spokes. So after I cleaned up the wheel, out of the 72 spokes, about 30 of them broke. So that's what I was trying to shake. You can hear the rattling. So it was a fluke of a thing. I mean, it was kind of like the domino theory, I suppose. You know, one spoke after another. So I had to buy a new wheel, and I got one of the new the Dayton tubeless wire wheels. But it was just kind of a fluke of a thing, because I had on the same wheel about 2 or 3 years before, I had a spoke that broke like at 10 o'clock and one at 2 o'clock. And the car was parked, and each time it punctured the tube. So I was amazed. The hubs, when I had that big wheel failure, the spokes all broke at the hub. So I was amazed that I didn't get a flat tire from somehow one of the spokes puncturing the tube. But anyway, I had to get a new wheel. And then one other thing, 2 years ago on my MGs, I had old tires. And, you know, you should get tires probably, I don't know, every 10 years or something, depending on how you know, it's an age factor rather than mileage. But anyway, and and I wanted to see how they really look like. So I asked the guy if he could, on each tire, saw a section of the tire so I could look at how much cracking there was in between the treads and what they're looking like on the inside, which is interesting. And I got Vredestein Sprint Classics 14-inch for my MGB and 15-inch for the MGC. I ordered them, one from Tire Rack and the other from Amazon, because Tire Rack did not have the 15-inch ones, and neither place charged me shipping, and they were about $140 each. And so, but I have Vredestein Sprint Classics on those, and also Vredestein Sprint Classics on my TF. So, but yeah, so that's a good, it's about, it's a good tire. You pay for good tires and you get your money, it's worth it basically. So that's my interesting wire wheel story.
Eric,
Yeah, John, that brings up another question. He mentioned about the tubeless wire and all that stuff. I have a TD, a 51 TD, early TD, and when I got it, it had tubes in it. The tires were very old, so I bought those Michelin XZXs.
were they black tubes or red tubes?
Black tubes.
Okay.
And so I ordered tubes to put in it, but I've seen online people are talking about, no, you can run tubeless tires. And I didn't know if that was a function of the wheel, the original wheels, if it was I wasn't sure. So I have tubes in them, but I wondered, do I need tubes? There seems to be varying arguments on the forums.
There was not a safety lip on the disc wheel until I think the MGB. But so what that means is if you get a flat tire, you can run the tire off the rim. I've never seen that happen. I mean, I've just never seen it happen. And for all the years that I was ever in the shop, we never put tubes inside a disc wheel. Just didn't. We just let them sit normally like a modern tire would sit on the rim. And,
Okay.
It's worked great. So one interesting thing, we had a customer one time who was trying to get tubes put in his tire at, I don't name a place, discount tire. And the salesman said, "Oh no, we can't put tubes in your wheels because they might catch on fire." And I thought, well, there must be some safety video that the guy just got done watching, or something or other. It's like, no, dude, it's going to go flat. It's going to go flat before it catches on fire.
Yeah, give me the tubes that are rubber instead of made out of paper, please.
And then back then, there were tubes and there were radial tubes, and the radial tubes had about twice the thickness of a regular tube. And those would stand up against all the little flashing on the inside of a new tire, which is there left over from manufacturing, because who cares? But yeah, and you got to be cautious when you're having tubes fitted to wire wheels. And I tell people, go to a motorcycle shop. That's what they're doing all the time. Who told me last time? I think it was the last time here, the time before. Someone said that they used cornstarch instead of baking powder, but the cornstarch got wet, balled up, and either punctured the tube. I think got real hard and punctured the tube, with cornstarch rather than the baking powder or baby powder, talcum powder. So
yeah, I use the what's currently sold as baby powder, which is cornstarch, and it works just fine. All the old rims, you can change yourself. You just, with tire irons, with tubes, you don't need to have a tire shop do it if you don't want to do it. I mean, it's easy enough to do. But two things I want to say is, all tires sold today are tubeless tires.
right.
That's how they're labeled, tubeless tires. Doesn't mean that they can go onto a rim that is riveted and not leak. It means that they're designed for modern wheels. But if you have an old wheel that is riveted there's no guarantees that it's not going to leak. It might or might not. So like I don't have tubes on my MGA steel rim wheels because they're holding air and they have the stem that goes through the rim. The other thing is if you have wire wheels that are old, you have to have tubes in them. They're not tubeless. Now, I suppose you could seal them up with silicone or something, but they're not designed that way. They need to have tubes in them. The other thing with the old wire wheels is where the stem, the tube stem goes through, there's supposed to be a grommet in there. It's a little nylon grommet that goes in there to keep it from chafing. I had a friend who just got new tires and tubes on his MGA with the 48 spoke wire wheels, and he developed a leak after 20 miles because they didn't put those little bushings, those little grommets in there. So make sure you use those grommets. The last thing I want to say, is John mentioned the plywood wrench for the knockoff wheels or knock-on wheels, as the British call them. I have two of them. I have a blanking plate on one side, and I have it marked as left side and right side, so I don't have to flip it around and try and lose control of that plywood on the knockoff, because it's really hard to hold control of it while you're whacking away on it. So I have two of them, one for left side, one for right side, with a blanking plate on the one side, so I can just hold it on there and whack it.
Very cool.
Hey, John, this is Judd.
Yeah.
A couple of things. One, if you are replacing tires that have tubes, get new tubes. I made the mistake of not, and coming from Maine to South Carolina, I had 4 blowouts on the way because I was cheap and I was didn't have any money, and I bought real cheap tires and I used the existing old tubes. Didn't make it. The other thing is, on that same trip, leaving Maine, every now and then pull those wire wheels off and grease it up, because I spent 3 hours on the Maryland Turnpike trying to get the damn wheel off the hub, and ended up destroying the wheel. So just take a little time and pull it off. I just did a Morgan this weekend that I don't think the wheels have been pulled off, and I don't know how long, but we got them off and got it all greased up good. And so just, I know you're a fan of grease. You can't put too much grease on the wheel, I don't think.
No, except that it goes out through the spokes and dirties up the wheel. So
Well, that's probably true. And I remember what you said. So I greased the wheel to slide it on so that the grease would come out toward me, as opposed to greasing the hub and sliding it on so that the grease would not, whatever you said.
The other thing you can do is, when I change a wire wheel, I put some silicone on those outer spoke, on the hub, so that the grease doesn't come out that end.
Okay, that holds the water in there too.
Well, the grease will take care of that.
Okay.
Hey, John.
I use anti-seize. That's one of the only places I use anti-seize on the car. A couple of great big bolts having to do with suspensions and wire wheels. Love anti-seize there.
Yeah, John, Moss would sell that Copa Slip, the spline grease. I think they still sell it in a tube. I think it's called Copa Slip. It's kind of a red spline grease, I believe.
Right.
And, my friend who I bought my TF from, he made a knockoff, out of plywood, pretty thick. So this is good thing he made. And one other thing I understand about tubes, well, if you buy a new tube before it's inserted in the tire, you should inflate the tube fully in case so there's no kinks or folded areas on the tube when it puts in the tire new. So, and then deflate the tire, then have the installer put it in the tire and inflate it to make sure that there are none of the rubber sticking together or kinks or anything like that. That's what I heard.
It folds over on itself, and then it chafes, and it lets the air out. Yep.
Hi, John.
John.
Could I ask about,
Yes.
sorry, Solly here from the UK.
Yeah.
I was wondering if I could ask about wire wheel conversions. I've got to replace my rear axle. Currently it's disc wheels converted to the wires. I don't know if it's worth because I'm replacing the rear axle with the just if I replace it with a wire wheel rear axle, or whether you've got any advice on that.
Well, you have to decide before you get the axle, what you're gonna do, because the disc wheel diff is altogether 1.5 inches. You still speak in inches, right? I'm
That's it.
just kidding. The wire wheel diff, the disc wheel diff is altogether 1.5 inches wider, 3/4 of an inch on the side. So otherwise you just put the hubs on, put the wire wheels on, but then, unless everything is perfect, which it never is, and you don't weigh very much, and the springs are good in the back, otherwise the car comes down and tears up the outside of the wheel on the inside lip of the outer wheel arch, because it pushes it outboard too much. So just decide whether you're going to have disc or wire wheels, and then get the rear axle for that application.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Where are you from?
I'm from the UK, the south of the UK.
Like,
Just outside of it's Portsmouth. It's about 2 hours from London.
okay, yeah, it's where the Mayflower sailed from, I think.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah.
Okay, right.
What's
One
the
more
name
thing
of
on
that
tubes.
tire?
Steve, we're on.
I'm
Steve,
sorry.
yeah.
What is the name of that tire that Guido has on his car from Holland or wherever it was from?
The trade name is Vredestein, Victor, Vredestein, Vredestein.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sprint Classic. It's called the Sprint Classic.
Okay.
And John, I take my wheels to a Harley Davidson dealer
Yep,
and they mail them for me.
yep. I took some, we used to use a guy, and he'd say, well, I'll balance these up to 150 miles an hour. I said, don't waste your time, you know? They aren't gonna go quite that fast, so.
Hello, John. It's Ian. One of the things you didn't mention, which I noticed, I changed the wheels on my car and went to the lightest wheel I could find. And the wheels that are on my car were particularly heavy. They were aftermarket steels that weren't very good. The ride quality improvement of the lighter wheels is fabulous. It really made a huge difference. I run the Z-Car wheels. They fit on, and Kumo tires. The challenge I had was finding the wheel nuts. You can't find wheel nuts for the Z-Car wheels because they're metric, and so I actually ended having to make the nuts. Once I'd done that, they've run quite a few years now, and I've been very, very pleased with them. I don't know how other people have fitted them because I've seen them on other cars. Be very careful because American nuts don't work right on those wheels.
Okay.
So, I noticed damage on the wheels when I bought them from somebody putting the wrong nuts. So,
Where are you calling from?
I'm from Boston. Yeah, I'm in Boston.
Okay, well, your accent would belies that, it doesn't sound like the normal Boston accent.
No, I'm from the
close to me.
UK, and the car is a home-built import, which is quite a common import in the UK, made out of an MGB called an NG. It was invented by Nick Green. And,
Okay.
There's quite a few of them, a few thousand of them in England, and it's some MGB based car. Yeah.
Thank you.
John?
Yes.
You said earlier that you want the narrowest tire you can get, but I agree with you. I think 165s is the widest you want to go on most cars. I even have 165s on my MGB, but a lot of people say, oh, I want 185s, 195s, whatever. And I don't understand why people want to go with such wide tires.
Well, some of it's look. You can't, I mean, if you're after the look, you got the look, right? And if you want the original look, you got to go find some bias plies that are like this, rather than, but the bias plies, oh my gosh, bias plies on a T-type or an MGA make it look real. But yeah, 165s, I don't think you can find one. We used to be able to find 155s back when Semperit or somebody was making tires, but you can't. Those are almost hard to find tires our size anyway. So
Vredestein 155s.
they do?
Yep, I
Okay.
bought them. I got them. I got the original size for my car.
The original MGA tire was a 5 in T-type and MGA and bias ply was 550. So you take your calculator and it's 5.5 times 25.4, and you got some tires that are in, if you can directly do that, and I'm not sure you can, but you're down to about like 140 or something. It's a really, really narrow tire. But when you think of your purchase on the roadway, you're traveling at 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, unless you're in Boston, and then you're not going anywhere fast at all. But you got just a little tiny contact areas, and I can understand why some people would think, well, the wider the tire, the better, but it makes it handle poorly. I had a picture that I sent out. We had a guy that used to sell tires, and he was living in Singapore while we restored his MGB, put a blower on it, and did all this fancy stuff that he wanted. He'd call up and talk to Lisa for an hour. It was midnight in Singapore, around there, I guess, and he'd call us in the middle of the day and dream about what his car should be. And he dreamed that he wanted these 16-inch wheels on his B with these really wide tires that have no cushion to them at all, and you couldn't steer it, and the ride was horrible. So he discarded those and went. He may have gone to 15-inch, but he started off with some really wide rims. You don't want them. Not for the kind of use that we put on them, which is driving around. I think Judd and the Cook and the Bob and Gloria Cook probably get more miles on their car than anybody else, on the session here. But
I'm just looking at the Vredestein site, and it's got the 155s, and it says for the vehicle that it's used as an MGB, among other vehicles.
okay.
I put the 155. It also says a 71 Porsche 911. So a lot of car people think you're right about using skinny tires. I love them.
Well, the less weight you have, the less you rev them up.
Yeah, it says MGB for spirited driving.
Okay.
Question,
I have to.
question for you, John, about tire pressures. I think a lot of people are running quite high tire pressures compared with what's in the manual.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I run 22, 23. That seems about right for my car.
I use 30-32, used it for 50 years. 30 in the front, 32 in the back. I went down to 22, 24, whatever whenever the handbook says. It feels like you're in an earthquake. The car is just moving all over the place. And people say to me, well, what tire pressure should I use? And I say, well, there's not a sticker on the inside of the door like a modern car. So you experiment, do 28-30, do 26-28, fool around with it. There's a maximum on the side. Caroline, my late wife, was on the phone one time, and this guy calls her up and he says, well, I'm having trouble getting enough air in my tire. And she said, well, how much do you have in there now? And he goes, about 90 pounds. That's the size it'll go. And she said, well, how much you trying to get in there? And he goes, well, it says weight limit, 480 pounds. different kind of pound. And he said, "Oh, get away from your car." Or is Glenn at Glenn's MG service? Oh, I gotta say something about that. Glenn at Glenn's MG service in St. Petersburg, Florida, his standard line is, "Sir, put down the tools and step away from the vehicle." So, speaking of that, I've got a tech seminar. We just set it up tonight, 17th of February in Florida. So if anyone's going to be in Florida and you're around the greater Tampa area, come on over to Glenn's MG service. I'll be there. Glenn and I work really well together. Well, we've never worked together. We can't. We're both bosses. That would never work. But for a day, it's just lots and lots of fun. So I've also got another tech seminar the weekend after that, which must be then the 24th, on the east side of Mobile Bay in Alabama, at the Southern Alabama British Car Club. So that one was in the mailer that I sent out. But anyway, I just had to say that about Glenn and the tools and yeah. So you don't put 480 pounds of pressure.
John, in Florida, when are you gonna be in Florida in February? Would you say, what was the date
17th.
of February?
Yes.
Okay. I might be there.
Hey.
John, about the width of tires,
Yeah.
narrower tires do turn easier, but for the kind of driving we do up through the mountain roads, I like the wider tires. It handles a little bit better. But when you're making a parallel parking, that's a little tougher with the wider tires, but I don't parallel park a lot.
How wide are yours? 195 or?
195, 60, 15, which is just a tiny bit shorter than the 165 80s that come
Okay.
out. So I always make sure that the height of the tire is about, so it doesn't throw my speedometer off any more than it already is.
Yeah.
But I like the wider tires. But if you're just driving around town or little, Sunday drives and that, the narrower tires would be better. But we like going through the mountain roads and so forth, and it just seems a little better.
Totally disagree.
But I've tried both, and they do hand. But the important thing about your tire is how much tire patch is on the ground. I've done a lot of studying on it. Like Sempra used to have the best tire patch of any car in their size, and so you can have a wider tire, but the patch on the ground isn't as much as some of the smaller tires. So it just depends on the individual tire, the tread design, and I did some studying of the Quatrack. Vredestein Quatrack was the best handling tire in their class and in their price range.
Okay.
That's important, the price range.
Ian brings up the tire pressure deal. I mean, the less pressure you got, the larger your contact area is, so to a point. So Judd does a lot of driving too. I know he does, but Bob and Gloria, what do you guys got? 512 on your car?
521.
521. So
I can't keep up with them, but I'm pretty spirited in the mountain.
You drive that MGA that I see in behind your head?
I drive it and the TD both in the mountains as hard as I can.
Yeah.
Most of the club people can't keep up with me. I'm not a race car driver. I'm driving for fun.
But you know your car.
But yeah, that MGA is the finest mountain car that it was ever built, I think. It just loves it. The TD is fun, but the MGA is awesome.
TD is like driving a go-kart.
do you have a 4.3 in that, Judd, or what?
I really don't know. I'm the second owner. I don't think anybody ever did anything to it. It's a Mark II, 1622. So let's see, with stock tires on it, I'm at 60 miles an hour. I'm doing about 3,700 RPM, somewhere in that range. I normally run it between 4,000 and 48.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but I can take the same stretch of road considerably faster in third gear than I can in fourth gear. Even though I can do all the cornering and everything, but you just have so much more control, I guess.
You're using the upper end of your RPM range there, yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess that's probably where the power is the greatest.
Yeah, so when you take your foot off the gas, you slow down faster. Than when you put your foot down on it, it goes faster. My MGA is like that. It wakes up around 3,500 RPM and really
Wakes up around 44. We've got a new member and he's got a red 62 Mark II, just like this. It is absolutely immaculate, gorgeous, shiny, beautiful. But he says, "Oh, I'm just afraid to get it over 3,500 RPM." I'm thinking, man, just push it. I don't know. I think the TD's the same way though. I mean, it really likes to be above $4,000.
They're sports cars. Sports cars. You know, you don't the RPM doesn't start, or the power doesn't start to fall off until you're up around $5,000 or so. You know, where it's running too fast. You know, but
you can drive all day at 45 to 5. The car seems to like it.
I agree with you, Bob, and I do it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Why have it if you don't drive it like it's supposed to be driven?
Everyone's different. Everyone's different. Some people don't drive at all. You know, they sit in their garage and they polish them. I just talked to a guy today about an MG owner. He had a TD Mark II, and it was in his barn. It was a squirrel's nest. The seats were all torn apart, and the squirrels living in it and everything. And he just beamed when he'd see the car and talk about it. He never drove it. You know, couldn't. The squirrels lived in it. You know, so everyone's different. You know,
they say drive it like you stole it.
Yeah, John, I was looking to buy a TC several years ago, and it was a nice car. The guy had it for 7 years, but he only put 250 miles on it. And I didn't know how many. I didn't proceed with. I don't know how many parts would be seized up or needed replacing. I mean, I think the farthest he drove it at any one time was maybe 4 miles to a cruise night or something, but 250 miles in 7 years.
It's
John, like I mentioned to you, we'd worked on a TD Mark II that sat for 33 years because they didn't have a ground strap on it. They didn't know that was the reason it wouldn't run, but everything melted. But anyway, once we put all the tune-up parts, put everything new on it, it rolled over, and as soon as we got it ready to start, it started right immediately. I was so impressed. Of course, they're low compression engines, but it's hard to kill an MG.
Hey, John, on the 155 tires, is there a width that you prefer?
Well, that's what we were talking about. That is the width. That is the width.
Well, the tires on my car now are 165 80s. So what's the 80?
The 80 is the relationship of the distance from the rim to the outside of the tire versus the width of the tire. So when you get a 40 series, then it's like a flag, and as you come up to parity, then it's as tall as it is wide. But the original tires always seem to be around probably an 80. So 165/80 is an excellent choice.
John, the Vredesteins, they're 165 HR15.
Yeah,
that's the ones that they made. I think that's the ones I got on my car.
Fred's the one who knows all the numbers and letters. He probably
the H is a speed rating.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I can't remember what they all are, but H might be, it's good up to 142 miles an hour, and the Z, if they have a Z there, it's good. Those are the high Corvette tires. They're good to 180 miles an hour or something. So H is a speed rating.
And the R must be.
R is radial.
Yeah.
Yep.
What I noticed on my Vredesteins that I bought for my MGB, they're 165s, but they don't have a ratio for the sidewall, and they look really small, so they might be maybe 60s or 55s, something like that, but there is no rating for the relationship. I don't know why Vredestein does it, but you have to research that and figure it out. But they seem small compared to a 165/80.
Okay.
The Michelins I bought for the TD, the XZXs, they don't have an aspect ratio either. They're just 165 SR 15. S is another speed rating. It's lower than H, but anyway.
Right, but the Michelins are a relationship which if you buy 165s, they are about an 80.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back in the 70s when our cars were new, the 165 14s were 80s, and they were 24.39 inches high. And they didn't put the 80 on there, but if you measured them, that's what they were.
See, when you go to the 175, then it goes to the 70R.
Well, you want to watch something else?
They give you the 70 at the
Makes
175.
you watching the game.
I'm gonna use my mute all button here. Guido, you're gonna have to unmute yourself again.
Yeah, I was saying the 175 and the Vredesteins goes to a 70. They give you that 70 number at the 175, but not the 165 or the 155.
So anyway, that's a lot of information about rims and tires. What else did we didn't talk about? The MGB changed from bias ply to radial tires in 65, around there, and they changed the speedo because the number of turns per mile changed 10. They wanted to make the speedo like really accurate. So that's another thing that happens with modern tires, is your speedo becomes inaccurate. The speedo becomes inaccurate anyway because of age, but it's the odometer that you're after. So if you're gonna have any speedometer work done, get the tires first and make the speedo match the tires. And if you're using Morris out at West Valley Instruments, he's got a form that he'll send you, and you gotta push the car through a certain distance and count how many times the cable turns. Or if you just want to check and see if it's working okay, you got to trust the government, but you can drive between mile markers and see how close your odometer is to what the mile markers say. And of course, the longer you go, the better it is, unless you got adult ADD. And you write down the first mile marker, and then like 3 days later, you go, oh shit, I was supposed to look at when I got off the expressway. So anyway.
John, you can also use your Garmin.
Only if you're going in a straight line.
Yes.
Judd, I told somebody that the other day. I said, we're in a straight line, it works fine. But if you're doing switchbacks, up the side of the hill, your elapsed distance gets confused too, I think. So,
right. John, I was curious though, because the A and the TD never came off the showroom floor with radials.
Correct.
And they've got in the book some recommended tire air pressure. Do you know, or does anyone know when the B changed from coming with bias ply to coming with radial? Did they change the recommended tire pressure?
They should have.
Okay, fair.
They should have. So there's stuff that shows up in the workshop manual that still, they just didn't update stuff. They missed it, editing, or they didn't want to put out a whole new page just for that. But I don't know what, by the time you're up to I don't have any owner's hand. Oh, so here, completely off topic. I've got a library. We've got a lot of MG books. And Tony Shoviak called me up after the seminar or after the Zoom session last time, when we talked about the suppliers, Maggie's MG Spares and the Beehive and all those old companies. And he said, let's do one on MG Memorabilia. So that'll be my first. I don't know if it's going to be the next seminar or the one when I get back from Alabama, that I'll do from my office, where I've got all the memorabilia in the world that I have, and I've got all those owners' handbooks, and I'll look in one like it from a 77B and just see what it says, because by then they were under all kinds of draconian instruction from the federal government to get all that stuff right.
John,
Yeah.
did you see where the Roadster Factory burned down?
I was going to mention that. Christmas morning, I got a text from Jim Pastor from Altoona, Pennsylvania, and I thought it was going to be a Christmas greeting. And he said the Roadster Factory is on fire. So by the end of the day, their 48,000-foot warehouse was reduced to ash. They brought in bulldozers, and it's been bulldozed. That's my understanding. Pastor talked to John Schwager, who worked there for years, who retired a couple years ago, but no one knows right now. I called today to get an update because I was going to mention that today, to see if that was it or if they were going to reopen. But that's the Roadster Factory. So that's it's not Moss Motors. Moss is the Goliath in all of our in Triumphs and Healey's and Jags and everybody else, but there are other suppliers too. And Roadster Factory was a huge supplier of Triumph parts and MG parts too. They sold those, and it's about 50 years old. Charles Runyon, a librarian, started it. Charles died 3-4 years ago. He tried to run a restaurant and lost it. Nothing loses money faster than a restaurant. And then one of his sons died, and it just took the stuffing out of him. And I don't know what he died of, but I always imagine it was a broken heart. Just too much pain and suffering in too short of a time. But his son Albert has run the Roadster Factory. And so this is a huge disruption in the Triumph supply chain, or the supply chain for everybody living in the western end of Pennsylvania, because so many parts are, Lucas parts and Grilling, and I don't think Triumphs use Lockheed, but all those kinds of parts. So anyway, thank you, Fred, for mentioning that. So I don't have any more of an update than just that.
Hey, John.
Put a link in the chat. There's a news article that you haven't gotten to yet, but it's in there for anybody who wants to check it.
Yeah, John, Albert lived kind of on the premises, I think, very close to the warehouse. Albert did, and they showed the videos. They pulled 3 Triumphs out of one end of the warehouses. It looks like maybe one was partially damaged, but they were able to salvage 3 cars. Apparently, they showed videos.
You can get more cars. What you can't get more of are all those little boxes of the weird fasteners that have been there for the better part of 50 years. But Jim Pastor wanted to say something.
Yeah, what I was going to say, I spoke with John Schwager today. He was there for 35 years and retired several years ago. He spoke to Albert today. And he said he wasn't sure what was going to happen as far as either getting back into business or what. But the brick part, if anyone has ever been to the building, the brick part of the building still standing. So if anyone's seen the video and you see the front where they brought out the 3 cars, the TR3, I think it's a Spit or a GT6 they got out in the black TR6. That building is still, the facade's still up. The rest of the building is completely gone. All 48, well, whatever is left of 48,000. has already been bulldozed. But John said that, you know, people in the community have really rallied together and helped out Albert and making donations to the fire company. That fire company that had the first call is only about 2 miles away from the Roadster Factory. It's in Armagh. The issue, I think, and John, you and I talked about this, the other 12 fire companies had to come from Indiana and Coalport and places that are probably in a fire truck on Christmas morning at 1 a.m. It probably took a while to get there. I mean, by the time they got there, I think the first call came in at 1:11, and all the other fire trucks and fire companies got there by 3 o'clock. So you imagine a building like that burning for several hours before. And it's, for those of you who don't know, it's pretty remote where it's at. It's right off of between Pittsburgh and where I live, right off of Route 22. If you Google it, you'll see where it's at. It's pretty remote. By the time everybody got there, it was pretty well shot.
To that point, fire at a certain point will double every minute.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing, I was just there Wednesday the 20th to pick up some parts with Albert, and I was supposed to go back on the 27th to pick some other parts up. But it was the thing that for guys like us who can drive there and pick parts up, I live 35 miles from there. It's the history in that building with the manuals that were all original, and the information is just, it's amazing to think that it's all gone. I mean, just all original pieces and one of a kinds that they kept for tooling. All the tooling, they made their own dashboards in the wood shop. They made all that stuff. It's just all gone. You know, it's a shame. You know, they did lose Caroline's car. Charles' daughter's car is if you saw the video, the MGB that was there, that was her car. There was a body shell, TR6 body shell, that was destroyed. And then there was a TR3, it looked like, with a roll bar that I saw in the parts area that's gone. And then way in the back, if anyone's been there, way in the back, I call it the lower 40. That building was immense. There were some other cars they used for reference. I know when I was there not long ago, there was a TR250 back there that they used for reference. I think there was a Spitfire and maybe one or two other cars, but that stuff's all gone. And it literally was bulldozed by noon. Put the hot spots out. It's pretty sad.
Man. Anyway, Fred, thank you for bringing that up. I was going to bring it up. I had it on my notes that I didn't transfer over to my other notes. So anyway, yeah, for everyone in the British car world, especially the Triumph world, that's a terrible, terrible loss.
Now, you were talking about suppliers for a moment, and that's why I mentioned, the Roadster Factory, because I bought stuff from them for years, but
when we had our Zoom last time, they weren't a part of the history of suppliers. Yeah. Now maybe they are. Yeah. So anyway, Tony Shoviak suggested we do MG Memorabilia. So I'll do that for my office the next time that I can. It's either the next time we have a Zoom or when I get back from. I'll still do some out of Alabama. Oh boy, you'll be able to hear the crash of the waves behind me. We're right on the beach. It's a nice place, and it's away from here. And it's not fair, I'm a Michigander, but oh boy, it's nice to get out of here during February. Oh my gosh, middle of the winter. Gosh, it's nice. Anyway, we should go over to the chat section here because prattling on about, my gosh, it's 8:30 and we've been talking about wheels and tires. And we never talked about the MGC. Doug brought it up for a minute. Heater blower question. This is from Mr. Curl. Heater blower question. When I run lights and wipers, then turn on the heater blower, I lose the fuse. I've been advised by a local shop to change the fuse block to a newer model. I don't think changing the fuse block is going to change this. So you could take the fuse out, run an ammeter across the connections, and turn everything on. This is are you still on? No answer, but you know, if you're running 20 amps, which would be really surprising, then the thing is to shut stuff off and see what's drawing so much extra current, and then go into that item and replace that single item, whether it's the heater blower motor or a shorted stoplight switch, or the wipers are dragging too much and drawing too much current. But you know, the cheap trick, of course, is just put a bigger fuse in there, but maybe there's an indicator of something going on. So the fuse that goes into the white-green circuit, whether it's the top fuse on a MGB 62 through 67, or the third fuse down 70 through 80, or however you do it, but it's between the white and the green circuit. The original amperage is 17 amps. So that it's you know, if it's anything above, if you're drawing above 20, something's going wrong, something's going on. So figure out what's going on, and then go from there. But just changing the fuse block isn't going to do it.
So are you still there?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself.
It's okay. You did.
So you said it's the white green circuit should be about 17 amps.
Yeah. What year model is it?
67 BGT.
Oh yeah, it's the top fuse.
Okay.
It's white's on the, if you looking over, you know, looking over the fender, the white circuit's on the right, green's on the left.
Right.
And everything that runs, you know, everything that runs through that fuse, not the headlights. The headlights are not through that, but shouldn't be through that. God knows how it's wired now, but it shouldn't be through that. Everything that works when you turn the key on, which is the stoplights, the wipers, the turn signals, the blower. Those are those are all things in there. But if you put an ammeter across that and then turn that stuff on, you'll find out if something's drawing too much current. And the wiper motors are a real good one for drawing too much current. Probably not the heater motor. So, but anyway, find out and then get either get a replacement for that part that's faulty, or get a better fuse. Maybe the fuses you've been putting in there are only 10 amp. I don't know. So,
Hey, John.
I'm kind of scared about overfusing the thing. I don't want to burn up the wiring.
Correct. So you don't want to put a 30 amp fuse in there, and just because then that might work, but it's going to stress what those wires can carry. So figure out what's drawing the current first.
So John, he says he runs the lights and wipers. The lights shouldn't be relevant if they're, because they shouldn't be going through that fuse. So the thing to do would be to turn the lights off and see if it still blows a fuse. And if it doesn't, then maybe somebody ran the lights through there that shouldn't have.
Sure, anything.
Right. Well, I've tried turning the lights off, and I didn't blow the fuse, turn the lights back on, and there it went.
Yeah.
So the lights very well may be going through it.
Maybe. I mean, who knows what someone's done in the interim, you know, but the original, the way it was originally set up is that the headlights and the parking lights are not fused.
Okay.
So
I will
ought to be.
It's gonna warm up. I think it's gonna warm up Thursday. It's gonna be a little chilly tomorrow. It'll warm up Thursday. I'll go out and play again.
All right. Where are you calling from?
Texas.
Okay. All right.
See, you leave Michigan in February because it gets so cold, and that's when our winter hits. So yeah, we've had days and down here in February that were in the 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I go to Gulf Shores, and it can be chilly there. My sister pays about twice as much as we do. She goes down to Marco Island where it's always nice, but she can't see the beach from where she is. We're right on the beach. So, but sometimes it does get chilly there.
Well, enjoy your trip.
Yeah, and check that out, and then you can always call me, and we can talk more about it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. All right, Doug Miller. My ADB is in for winter and has been for a month or so. This weekend, I noticed the ventilation hose from the side cover to the air filter carburetor has an oily film on the hose. What would cause this? Since these hoses are empty, could it be condensation? But Doug, you're still on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So this is what kind of carburetor do you have?
Weber.
Okay, so you got the hose from the front tappet inspection cover that comes up to that little fitting that goes into the bottom of the air filter.
Yeah, and in the middle of the hose is a oil capture container.
Oh, okay. Probably don't need that. Because there isn't much movement of air through there because of how small that fitting is in the air cleaner. So you're getting oil on the outside of that line?
On the hoses, it's a very thin, oily, slimy kind of coating. Wipes off very clean with a rag.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't know. I mean, it could be permeating through the hose, I suppose, because the inside of the hose, I mean, almost everybody just uses heater hose there.
Right.
The heater hose is not set up for carrying oil vapors. You just change the hose and see if, on the other hand, if it's not hurting anything, I wouldn't worry about it. But
No, it doesn't seem to be causing any problem. I just happened to notice it while doing some regular, winter maintenance.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Marty's put this in. It's the University of Michigan, University of Michigan versus the University of Washington. Okay. All right.
Current score is Michigan 14, Washington 3.
Don't do that. Don't tell us.
First quarter.
All of us are going to watch it after
First
this
quarter.
is over. Don't say it. Don't say it.
Don't say it. I read about a guy that lived in Hawaii, and he swore everyone to silence because he had to, he had to watch it on reruns. He refused to listen to the radio, so he'd watch these games, as though they were live. So, okay, Doc Rosevear, I need to replace my rear bushings. Can I use poly bushings in the rear and rubber in the front? Sure. Will it be harder to press into place? You talk about the front bushings on the leaf springs?
Yeah.
Oh, those comes in halves, I think.
Okay.
And so there's no pressing, but you got to press the old ones out. That's the bugger. And I don't know. I don't know anything about the manufacturing on those. Those are whenever I order the new bushings now, I just get them. They're polypropylene. I don't know what they're from Moss. They white box and they're red and they come with it looks like Vaseline, Still Glide, something or other on them to keep them from squeaking. So you can use those. Mr. Neary, John, when it comes to greasing the car, which grease do you recommend? Red grease. NLGI number 2 lithium grease. And I have been purchasing Lucas grease, partly for the humor, and the other part of it is because it's red. And I can get that at Napa, and you use that in everything. You use it in the front wheel bearings, you use it everywhere. It used to be that greases were separate. Wheel bearing grease was different from white grease, was different from, there are all these different greases. And now that #2 lithium grease just seems to take care of everything in the car. And I also use it when I'm building an engine. When Craig West was here, we were putting the bottom end of his, well, put his whole engine together, started it up on the bench. We had, I started off with a tube of grease and I only had about a half a tube left over, third of a tube left over when we're done building that engine. I love grease. I just use it everywhere, but #2 grease.
So like when you're using like, squirting it into the grease nipples and everything, just everywhere underneath, you don't have to use different grades or viscosity.
Same stuff. You get in the old workshop manuals, and they made quite a distinction between greases. But today, greases are different. They're better. I don't know, but I know that they work everywhere just great.
Okay.
So if you
Perfect. Thank you.
use red grease, you can use blue grease. You can use gold grease. Everybody's got a different color, but I like red grease. Then when you start to see the fresh red grease come out, you know that you've got as much grease in there as you can. Todd Tweedy, hey John, I'm talking about mini light wheels. What is your experience with VTO wheels out of Phoenix? I remember them, but nothing bad. So,
I had been looking at just the ones out of Moss for the CGT that I'm working on. And then had stumbled across, actually, it was a gentleman from the Speed Shop, Acme Speed Shop was touting that he loved them. And I've got a buddy of mine down there in Phoenix, and he seemed to like them, although that picture of that mini light you had on the emails.
Not from them. That was from the other supplier.
Yeah, I saw it and it startled me, and I thought I better ask.
Can I add something here?
That was a one-off. Yeah.
I've got VTO wheels. It's an 8-spoke wheel from Acme Speed Shop. Actually, they come out of Phoenix, but Acme Speed Shop is Hap Waldrop in South Carolina.
Yeah.
It is, and I'm real happy with them.
Are you good?
He's easy to deal with. Now the thing is, when you call and talk to Hap, he'll keep you on the phone for a half hour, 45 minutes, just shooting the breeze. Which is
for sure.
Fun.
I had spoken briefly with somebody actually at VTO just because I was looking to get they're the center hub knockoff version, but I was looking for it in more of that charcoal color, and they said, sure, not a problem, $50 a wheel, and we'll custom make them for you just like that. So I was all in all very pleased with everything I'd seen. I just was happy to hear somebody else has had some good experience with them.
Excellent.
And they look good too.
Yeah, they did look good. I like the look of them. And John, actually, I had a question earlier on that you must have missed. I was going to have my water pump on my C rebuilt through Robert Kirk, but since his passing, his supplier, that contact has been lost. His stepson he's got piles and piles of things to go through. And any recommendations on getting a water pump rebuilt?
No. I don't. I just don't. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. All right. I'm assuming the guy he was working with was in Davenport. I'm assuming, but his son said it's going to be months and months and months and months and months for him to weed through everything.
Calls up and says, "Hey, how come you haven't picked these up yet?" Yeah, and that call might come tomorrow or 2 months from now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will keep nosing around. I've got 3 water pumps that I want to get rebuilt. I've got another car that someone's looking at.
Are you a member of either the AMCRA, the American MGC Register Association, or the?
I am.
All right. Okay. Well, those guys somebody must have an answer out there, or
Yeah.
can lead you to someone in England, or I don't know.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, I've got a buddy of mine who lives in the south of England, and he comes back and forth to the States, and he said he'd be happy to mule some parts back and forth for me.
Very nice. Yep. Very nice.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Looking forward to seeing you this spring.
Hey, great. I was going to mention too that for disc wheels, the disc wheels are made from pretty thin material, and over a period of time, especially with the old-fashioned tire changers, it was not uncommon to bend the wheel a little bit when you're putting a new tire on. Doesn't happen, I guess, today, but it sure did then. And you cannot get a wheel straightened. That's been I looked for 20 years, but I found a place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin called Diamond Wheel, and they took my rims and they drilled the rivets out, my twin cam wheels, and they made new rims and welded them onto the old centers. So with a safety lip, but they look exactly, you can't tell at all. And they are absolutely straight. The fastest I've driven my MGA was 90 a couple years ago, and it was like driving on glass. It was perfect. So diamond wheels. Okay.
Awesome. Got it down.
Hey, John. I bought a rebuilt water pump on the eBay, so I just thought I'd let Todd know. I'll put his name in
the chat section.
I've been really happy with it. It's been on there here, and it looks like it was kind of black, that it was gonna turn rusty, didn't look painted. I don't know what he treated the metal with. He did it was a really nice job, all smooth, and it was an original for the 67. So I'll put his name in the chat.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment on rebuilds?
Yes.
There's a guy named Roland Butch Terrace in Hemet, California, that rebuilds water pumps. I don't know much about him. I just have a note in my stuff here. His number is 818-281-7333. You might try him. I don't think he's cheap, but he might be able to do it.
Hey, cheap ain't good and good ain't cheap.
Yeah, that's the one.
Good, fast, cheap. Pick two.
Yeah, that's the old line. We had a body shop right down the street from our old shop on Patterson, my last shop, and they were a real high-end shop, and you could get two of them. You could get it out of there so fast, 6 weeks. Turnaround time, just beautiful. And I think the last MGB we had painted was 14 grand. So yeah, it was not cheap. So Pat Garrity has put a note in here about lightweight wheels are like lightweight aluminum flywheels. Reducing the rotating mass improves acceleration and deceleration. So we're going back to the type of wheels that we have on here. So and Marty's put a thing on here about the Roadster Factory. So all right, Mr. Welch, Sally Welch. Would you be able to touch on, wire wheel conversions? Yes, I think I already answered that. I've converted hubs, but don't know a lot about replacing the rear axle. Yes, yep. From Portsmouth. Andrew Sloman, I'm having an issue with Zoom in the regular mode. No matter who is talking, all I see is a black screen with me in the lower right corner. I can switch to gallery view and then I see people. This hasn't happened before. Is anyone else having this problem? So all Andrew can see is a black screen and himself.
Well, that was like an hour ago, so I think there were two people with trouble and at least one of them fixed it.
All right, okay, good, okay.
But also, are you on speaker view in your recording? Someone else asked about that too. Did you remember to switch it?
I'm on speaker view, yes.
Okay, for the recording part, okay.
The recording part, yes.
Yep, good, okay.
Hey, John, real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had put a message up to the board at 10:07, and it doesn't really show on the list. Do I have to wait till 7 o'clock to put a message up?
Apparently, that's true. Or as soon as I make that chat section operational, which I did at about 7:02. So what was your question?
Real quick, everyone. Thank you. The lower radiator hose on a 76 MGB, the lower radiator hose where it leaves the radiator, I had a little small leak there, and I removed the circular clamp and put a hose clamp on. Probably a mistake. I have to use two hose clamps to stop the leak. Should I go back to the circular band clamp?
Well, just a normal hose clamp with a barrel on it and screwdriver to tighten it up. You ought to be able to do it. So you're suggesting maybe that the inner diameter is a little too large and you can't get it tight enough with
the hose is new a year ago, and I had to put two band clamps on 5/16 nut, and I tightened them pretty good and it stopped leaking. But I was told that heating and contracting, a band clamp is not the right application for that. Is that wrong? Or
I've always used just normal everyday hose clamps for everything.
Okay. And then just to hurry up for everybody else, my overdrive is leaking. The six bolts that hold the plate on the bottom, they each have a drip of oil on each bolt. I was told by Dick Moritz to maybe take out one bolt at a time and put some thread dope on it, and then put the bolts back in one at a time.
I think what's happening is it's wicking out of the filter and coming around on the bottom side of the plate. And because the bolts are the lowest point on that unit, the oil's collecting there before it drops off. So change the filter. The filters that they had before were a piece of screen and it was sandwiched with some cardboard. And you look at that and you go, well, can't the oil get sort of through the screen and drip out the edge? How would that work? But I just did an overdrive for Bob and Gloria Cook, and the filter that I got from Moss was very much different, and it looked better to me. I felt more comfortable with that. So maybe just change the filter.
Would that require dumping out the oil? Probably.
Well, yeah, a lot of the oil comes out. Yeah, really though, you can save it. I mean, you can save it. I mean, if you're
right.
Frugal, but it only takes three quarts of oil. So what was that? Well, I don't know how last time I went to buy oil, I bought 5 quarts of oil, a tube of grease, I think a big container of brake fluid, and maybe a 1 or 2 quarts of 80-90 gear oil.
Okay.
It was like 80.
Yeah.
Napa with my I'm about drop dead, anyway.
I'm losing 12 ounces in 2 years. 6 ounces a year is leaking on my drive, on my
the bigger issue
garage.
is it's leaking and damaging the concrete underneath, or you're being banned from your sister-in-law's house or something with the car because it drips. So that isn't very much of a leak, but there shouldn't be any leak. So
you think it's a filter? Okay.
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, a lot of talking here about that. Let's see. Okay, Leland Drum. I'm looking to get a B, and I'm trying to decide which year. Understand the later years had low compression engines and went from 95 to 65 horsepower. Questions? What year did they change from high compression to low compression? Will changing out the single carb with dual SUs bring the 65 horsepower back to 95? So first of all, are you still on? Have you waited all this time, Leland? Have you waited?
I am still here.
Hey, all right. So find the car you like. Find the car you like that you can afford, and then make it perform the way you want to. So the engine in the 1955 MGA is about that much different from the engine in a 1980 MGB. Oh, the displacement's a little bigger in the newer one and everything, and the crankshaft's a little stronger, but geez, you can do anything you want with that engine. And some of it is complicated and expensive, some of it's really inexpensive. So you can change the compression ratio, you can change the cam, and you can change the carburetors really easily. So buy the car you want. If you want a rubber bumper car, my favorite, just personally, my favorite MGBs are 73, 74. They're indistinguishable. They are as nice as the chrome bumper ever got. There's armrests, there's a center console. They're nice cars, okay? I guess probably my next choice would be 77 through 80. That's a rubber bumper car. They are sweet. They're really, really nice. They ride a little bit higher. You can get in and out of them a little more easily. The heater controls are great. And then after those come the real early, the 63 through 67, the more Spartan ones with the steel dash and everything. The two that I stay away from when I'm counseling people on what cars to get is 68, 69. They were in a transition those 2 years. They'd come away from the standard MGB, and now they were going to the safety MGB, and they didn't get it sorted out really until about 70, 73, 74. But by 1970, it's a lot nicer car. In 75, 76 was just the same thing. They'd gone from the chrome bumper to the rubber bumper. They didn't quite have it sorted out, but by 77, they're onto it, and it stayed right through to the end. So, black, white, red, blue, or green, GT or Roadster, wire wheels or disc wheels, those are harder to change. So pick up.
Funny you say that, because the 73 and the 77 is basically the two I'm trying to decide between. But there's things I like about both of them. So
go for how you feel in it, go for how you fit in it, go for what it looks like, and then with some extra money with that later one, you can make a 1980 MGB perform wonderfully well. You can get all kinds of tickets in it.
Well, I was thinking about my bucket list item is to put a supercharger on it. And
is a silver bullet. It doesn't matter if the cam is half worn out. It just doesn't matter. That thing that pops up. And if you're talking about power at the rear wheels, about 60 horsepower at the rear wheels. Okay, that's about what you get on an MGB. Is about the best you can do. The best we ever got with a non-supercharged MGB was 70, 75 at the rear wheels. We've done a lot of work to it, a lot of work, high compression and ported and polished cylinder heads, and it still ran SU carburetors. But you can blow all the way through that and just by the supercharger. But help me out, that blower's like $5-6 grand now, isn't it?
it is. It is. I mean, that's why it's a bucket list thing. But if I were to put that supercharger on an 80, or I put that supercharger on a 73, everything else being equal, would I notice a bigger difference in the 73?
the difference between before and after, you'd notice on the 80.
Well, okay, that's the wrong word. If I were to drive both the 80 and the 73, which would impress me more? With the blower on it.
Not sure you'd be able to tell,
Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
but maybe the 73.
Because it's a higher compression engine?
Well, in the cam, in the cam's a lot better. They had to detune the car for emissions. So it isn't just, it isn't just the blower. You change the distributor too. They had one distributor that was the best distributor. And they used that from 62 through 67. And then in 68 through 80, 12 years, they had, I don't know, maybe 10 different distributors, all to meet emission standards. And all the hocus pocus that went with that. But you strip that, you put that original carburetor distributor back on the 80 and a pair of dual SUs, and you're almost there. You still got a detuned camshaft, but you can change that too. You can do it in place. You don't have to take the engine out of the car.
What distributor is that?
It's a 40897. That's in a 25D body, 25 Delta body. That's a 40897, or in a 45D body, it's a 41427 distributor. So say you got the same curve.
41427 and a 45D.
That was sold for years as the Euro spec distributor. So, and there are two distributor guys in the States that will rebuild the distributor to your engine specs, to your specs, or to 40897 specs, whatever you want. And that's Jeff Schlemmer at Advanced Distributor in Minnesota, or Rob Medinsky at British Vacuum Unit in New Hampshire.
He rebuilt the distributor on my A, and it runs wonderfully.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
I'll see you in April in Katy.
Oh, all right. Okay. Great. If I buy the Michelin XCXs manufactured in Serbia, my wife will leave me. That's because his wife is Bosnian. That's a hoot. Okay. Tire recommendation for an MG midget. Well, it's the same set of rules. Vredestein may make the same tires. I don't know. Peter McCarthy. They may make the same ones. Vredestein, I don't know if they get down to 13-inch wheels or not. I don't know. Pat Garrity from Long Beach, California says, I buy Lucas tire in Long Beach. Stan Lucas is a TC owner and very knowledgeable about sports car tires. So if you're in the Southern California region, you want to go to Long Beach to Lucas Tire. Rick, I want to paint my Roadster wheels. What brand of paint should I use? So there's two colors on there. There's silver, 1976 Ford Granada silver. That's getting harder to find, but it's not metallic, but it's not hammered. Doesn't look hammered, but a 1976 Ford Granada silver. There used to be an FM 149 in Duplicolor. So when you're painting the Roadster wheels, you paint them silver, and then either put a mask on it and spray in the black, or really, frankly, more easily, hand paint in the black, or mask them and then very carefully cut out the insert, exposing that part which is supposed to be black, and paint that black. And then when you're all done, put a clear coat on the whole wheel. Some people have started off and said, oh, well, I'm going to do this the right way. I'm going to powder coat it silver and then paint in the black. Paint doesn't stick to powder coating, comes off real fast. So then you end up having to scratch up the powder coating, and you can't do that because of where it is and how it makes the rest of it look and so forth. So painting makes the most sense. But anyway, the 1976 Ford Granada Silver is the silver to use.
Ford Granada Silver, okay.
So it's you can buy this Duplicolor from Napa, but it used to be FM for Ford Motor, FM 149. It used to be that, but it's not that anymore. Here, no, it's not. I haven't updated it in my tech book. I don't know what it is. And God knows the guy behind the counter doesn't know what an MG is. He doesn't know what a Ford Granada is either, probably. Anyway,
John, I think the official name is Argent Silver.
What's that?
I think the official name of it is Argent Silver.
ARGENT?
Yes.
Is that a Duplicolor?
No, I think it's either PPG or whatever the Ford number is for the Granada.
Okay.
And Moss sells wheel paint too, but it's expensive.
Right. Well, that's because they're in California and all that packaging and all that stuff.
Are you saying that the 76, is that the year for the Granada?
That's the year of the car. Yes, that is the back when I established that as the color that MG wheels should be to match the original paint. A 1976 Ford Granada wasn't that old. Now, of course, it's really old. So I don't know if you can get a listing from Duplicolor on that or not. Give me a call in the next day or two, and let me see. I bought some for my daughter's car because I painted it. I painted her wheels, and I just used Duplicolor from Napa. And I'll be at Napa in the next day or two, and I'll try to look on the chart and just see if it rings a bell. But it's not complicated. And then the other color is just gloss black.
Okay.
And send me an email, Rick. Send me an email, and I'll send you back pictures of painting my daughter's rims and how I did it. I used masking tape. I had this picture up. I had this picture up. You can buy the mask, but oh boy, you got to be so careful in using that. And it's got to adhere to the silver, because then when you spray the gloss black on it, it wicks underneath there and looks like shit. So I prefer to mask. Well, you'll see. Send me an email.
I did buy the mask, the rim. Moss in England had it, and I spent more on shipping than the cost of the thing. But it looks to me that there would be so much overspray from it.
Yeah, they're not very durable.
Yeah.
So you end up having to use grease. You can use. Let's go back to the red grease. You put grease on the underside of the thing and then stick it on so it stays there. But it's just easier to mask the whole thing off and just hand paint it in.
It's what we overcame the overspray problem by Gloria hand painting the black. No overspray.
Yeah. Seems like it would take a long time, but Rick, send me an email, johntwist@universitymotorsltd.com. It's on my website too. And I'll send you the pictures back of my daughter's wheels.
Thank you.
You're welcome. David Schwass, any idea of Canadian supplier for Vredestein? No, I don't know. But my gosh, they have to be out there. Although Marty's got something up right after that. Maybe that's and it may be. I don't know. Peter McCarthy, John Lind, midget guys on the MG Experience Forum say that a Chevy Vega rim are. I get something in the way here, are one of the very few that will fit a midget. A Chevy Vega. Interesting. Okay. the all British sports car swap meet sponsored by the Chicago MG Club will be at the DuPage County Fairgrounds, Wheaton, Illinois, Sunday, the 24th of March. I will be there. So that's the March 24th, and that's a British car. It's a fun show to go to. There's lots of people, lots of vendors selling everything from their late husband's collection of MG memorabilia to the boxes of someone else's boxes of old discarded SUs and gearbox bits. And anyway, that's a fun show.
There's even, John, there's even a chance for some, at the very end, a little bit of dumpster diving for those who, the stragglers who are really desperate, haven't found the thing they're looking for. But yeah, thanks for coming. We'll look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, okay. All right. David Schwartz also says in the Ford versus Ferrari movie, the guy's complaining his MGA wasn't running well, and the mechanic told him to sell it and buy a wagon with wood grain because he didn't know how to drive the MGA. Then the fight broke out. Yeah, that's yeah. It looked like the guy's shocks were bad too when he left. And also there's something about a Hyundai and Nissan wheels may fit MGs. Yes, Nissan, I remember that. Nissan wheels fit MGBs. Yep. We've got some more notes on here, back and forth. Everybody should read the chat section. We're talking about date codes, download the speed app. Steve Olson, here we go. My midget runs 175/70 R13 tires, and the odometer speedo is spot on with the highway markers and the GPS. So Steve Olson says 175/70 13s are excellent replacements. The fuel gauge, here we go. The fuel gauge on my MGA was just rebuilt and calibrated to a fuel sending unit. I bench tested it and it was spot on. I installed it without replacing the sending unit, as it is the same Moss type as it was calibrated to. The gauge read 1/4 when almost empty. I filled up the tank and the gauge shows to the top of F. I've driven 140 miles and the gauge is still in the top of F. Be careful. Anyway, so what's stuck? Is the sending unit stuck? So Leyland, are you still on?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay, all right. Yeah, those new sending units are the quality control on the new sending units are awful. So you don't have the original sending unit?
No, I have 2 Moss units.
Okay, all right. Well, when you take them apart and look at the quality of the construction, it's considerably different. So my suggestion is just get used to what you see on the fuel gauge. But if you want to change it, it probably requires taking it out and bending the arm so the float is in a different spot. Maybe you don't.
Well, I can swap it out for the one they calibrated it with. That's not a problem, and that's probably what I'll do. But I'm just curious. The gauge will go to empty, so the gauge moves. It's at empty when it's off. It goes right to full and stays there. When I first changed it, when I first put it in the car, it registered 1/4 of a tank, and my tank was almost empty at the time. And so when I filled up the gas, then the gauge moved up to full, but it has not come back down. So I'm wondering, is it just as simple that the sending unit is stuck in the full position?
Maybe.
Does that happen?
Sure, anything can happen. They're not built with a lot of quality.
Okay, all right.
So
I just wanted to know what to bang on first.
Yeah, jack make sure the fuel level's down, and then jack the car way up on the right-hand side so that all the gasoline runs to the left side, the driver's side, and take that out. Make sure you use a quart gasket with number 2 Permatex on it. I like that better than the rubber gaskets. Yeah, we changed the gal's sending unit once in the shop. Oh, must have been about 1983. And she called me up about 2 weeks later. She was on fire. She said, I just ran out of gas and my fuel gauge was reading full. And I said, well, when did it, what's going on? And she said, well, I haven't put any gas in it since you tuned it up. I said, you've been driving it for 2 weeks? She's primary transportation. She said, yeah. And I said, well, didn't you think maybe that was kind of weird? And she said, well, I just thought you did a really good job on the tune-up. So anyway, yeah, been there. Yeah.
Thanks, John.
John, may I add to that?
Yes.
On one of during my resurrection of my MGA, I changed one of the fuel senders to one. I don't remember where I got it from, but it was an aftermarket sender. And sure enough, I had the very same problems as the previous person mentioned. It turns out that that lever arm from the float to the sensor variable resistor was a little bit too long, and apparently it was hanging up on one of the fuel and one of the partitions, one of the baffles in the fuel tank, so that thing was just too long. So I changed it to an earlier version that I actually took out of the car, and it was definitely shorter by, I forget exactly what, a half inch or so. So I put that one in that I thought had been leaking before, and it worked fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, so my point is check the aftermarket stuff, and also be sure that when your fuel tank must be grounded in order to give a low zero, an empty fuel reading on the gauge.
Yeah, it is. That's not that. It worked as far as I know, because when I put the gauge in, it showed only a quarter of a tank. And when I filled it up, it moved up to full. So it was working. It just hasn't come down. And it doesn't fluctuate. I know that the tank needle should move as you're driving because the gas is moving. And it just stays rock solid where it is. So I'm almost positive that sending unit has to be stuck.
Yeah,
I was wondering if there could be anything else. If it could be electrical that would be making that happen too.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, if it's stuck on full, maybe as Jim said, you lost your ground to your tank. The tank is supposed to be grounded through the line that goes to the fuel pump, but I always put an extra ground on it, on that little square plate on the outside of the sending unit. I put a black wire there with a ring terminal on it and take it over to the little tag that hangs down at about 11 o'clock when you're looking at the wheel arch that supports the wiring. The wiring loom goes through a J clip there. And
so if I lost my ground, I would show full.
If you lose your ground, it shows full.
I'll check that too. All right. Thank you very much.
Yep. Wayne, my TD left rear brake rubbed on the drum and sounded terrible. I found that some TDs had anti-rattle springs on them. I heard the B spring and pin system might work and be easier to install. That is correct. I found that did not work because of the distance between the rear plate and the shoe was either too short or too long to work. Ended up putting the original springs back in and it worked. So the first TDs that came out did not have anti-rattle springs in them. Then the later ones did, and they little conical springs they're horrible to fit, absolutely horrible to fit. But the first TDs didn't have those. I thought you could use an MGB, you could get a drill a hole in the backing plate. I thought you could use MGB pins in there. That's what somebody told me, and I just assumed that they were telling me correctly. They're a whole lot easier to fit. But you got to have those springs in there, or else the shoe's going to end up hitting the drum and chattering. So. And Dave Schwass wanted to make sure he knew how to spell Vredestein, that's over here in the chat section. Ian says, here's a trick. Solder a headlamp bulb across a blown fuse and plug the fuse into the block. And when you find the high draw, the bulb will glow bright. Okay, so rather than using an ammeter, he's using a headlamp instead of a 1157 brake light, which won't carry enough current. But a headlamp will carry a lot of current. So he's suggesting hooking the headlight up to the fuse block instead of the fuse. And as you begin to run current through there, that headlamp will glow brighter and brighter. Thank you, Ian. And we got the water pump taken care of. One suggestion about the Gilda said, put LED headlights in the car that was blowing the fuse. That should take care of that. Here, Sean, everybody says, the clutch master cylinder fluid on my 69B is leaking past the piston out by the pushrod side. I was hoping to rebuild it while still in the car. How do I get the piston out? Almost always you can get that piston out. So you take the circlip out, take the push rod out, and then you put a Phillips screwdriver in there and you push it down and let it pop back, and push it down and let it pop back. At the end, you have your friend with his hand on the master cylinder and a rag on top of that, and a rag on the front of the master cylinder, so you don't get brake fluid on anything. Brake fluid takes paint off faster than zip strip. And you go underneath at the bleeder on the slave and take your air gun and go and put a little pressure on it, and that piston will pop right out. But you got to be so careful. You got to be so careful that you don't get brake fluid on stuff. And I'm just looking down here. Here we got an address for Butch Terrace. So British Auto Salvage. British Auto Salvage has rebuilt water pumps. A lot of information here. Phil Calera says, I hear a slight squeaking from the rear as I drive over bumps. I think it's the spring leaves just loud enough to be audible, and just wondering if there's something I can spray or pour on the leaves to penetrate them. Spray graphite, thin oil? Sure. WD-40 temporarily? Yes. That all might do it. If it's squeaking, if it's the leaves rubbing against each other. Greg, I tried to get the discussion 4 times, but I kept getting talked over. I wanted to get some work done on my B. What I wanted to say was, when putting tubes and tires, check for a sticker on the tube. If it has one on it, remove it. Because over time, the movement of the wheel and the tire will put a hole in the tube where that sticker was. So anyway, Greg, thank you very much. That's real handy. Anyone who's putting tubes in should know that, but hey, who knows? We got a lot of notes in here about, oh, here, Steve Olson says, big difference in rating horsepower when they change from flywheel to rear wheel. Absolutely. When they're checking, that was the question earlier before, the 75 horsepower engine and the 94 horsepower engine. When they're checking that on an engine dynamometer, there's no water pump, there's no alternator, there's no clutch, no gearbox, no differential, no drive shaft. So you chew up a lot of heat, a lot of work, a lot between the engine and the wheels. Here we go. iPhone says that he had a nice tour one time of the Roadster Factory so long ago. Cumho Solus tires on both my MGB midget, or on my 68 midget and my 73 Lotus Europa. They work real well. Carbonized gray Ford Granada silver color code. Here we go. Carbonized gray Ford Granada paint color code M7 M7458. I don't know if that doesn't look like a duplicate color, but there it is. And Advanced Distributors, we got them here. And the British Vacuum Unit, we've got them in here. And Dodge Challenger in a Plymouth Sapporo made by Mitsubishi back in the 70s fits an MGB. Apparently we're talking about rims there. And Doug, 146 tonight. That's very nice, thank you. Trying to get the master cylinder out, and we're down to the end. So we've got 81 people that are asleep or still hanging on. Doug, are you still on? Or did Doug have to leave? Doug had to leave. Too bad, because Doug and I always have a hat challenge. And I brought a hard pith helmet tonight to show Doug a different pith helmet. I have 3, but Doug's not on anymore. So anyway, we are at 9:19. Nice talk tonight about wheels. We didn't spend any time at all on MGCs. Anyways, a nice chat about wheels and tires. Everyone had something to say. Very nice. And I'm going to not hit the mute all again. So if people want to unmute and say hello or goodbye. Stu Cole, I see you on there. Stu Cole, I haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, unfortunately, Monday night conflicts with my band practice night. So
all right, okay.
We're off this month, so I'll be watching you every Monday.
So
Good talk, John. See you later.
Yep, see you later. 30 years ago, I wanted to teach my son something that would be really unusual. And Stu says, well, tell him that the tale of Sam McGee, what's that?
Cremation of Sam McGee.
Yep. And that was too Canadian. So we did I taught him to recite the periodic table of elements instead.
Being an old chemistry teacher, that came naturally. Emphasis on old, John.
Yes, see that. So Stu's got a magnet. Yeah.
Hey, John, you talked about memorabilia for MGs.
Yeah.
Scott Harper gave me this. He cleaned it up. His wife painted the black. He didn't know what it was from. Looks like it's maybe a step plate. And you see how big it is from my hand.
Yeah.
He didn't know what it was. He just gave it to me as a gift, and we don't know what it is. So if anybody out there can tell me what this is. And I don't know if it's supposed to be black in there. They painted it black.
Yeah, so it's got some depth to it. Does it open up or something?
No, it just one piece.
Looks like
It's got some depth.
Looks like an MG ashtray. Remember, remember ashtrays?
Yeah,
You know, I have
don't-
no idea.
well, maybe somebody, when you do that, remember,
Yeah.
somebody will know.
A couple weeks. we can figure
Scott,
it out.
he's got everything out there and he didn't know what it was from. He said he just had it, so he thought I'd like it.
No, Fred's always interested in stuff. Fred chases that kind of stuff.
I'm just kind of figure what to do with it, but I like it.
Yeah, well, start smoking again. You got somebody split the ashes, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure what, it looked to me, it might have been like a step plate or something. I don't know.
No.
Is it a side cover? Is it the rear side cover?
No, there's no way to hold it on.
Looks like an ashtray to me.
Well, it's not deep enough for an ashtray, but it's
Well,
thick.
maybe you can smoke one cigarette at a time.
Yeah. But
I don't know.
Isn't that what kids make when they're in the shop?
yeah, I just, whenever I was working with clay, I'm so talented, all I could make was ashtrays, no matter what I tried to make.
Yeah. Well, anyway, ladies, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on. And,
Don, the next meeting is 22nd?
yeah, that's 2 weeks from yes, the 22nd.
Okay.
John, when are you gonna be in Gulf Shores?
I'm gonna be in Gulf Shores. I put that in the, I'm gonna be in Gulf Shores the whole month of February. I'm gonna be down in, I'm gonna be at Glenn's MG service on the 17th in St. Petersburg, Florida. And in the next weekend, the 24th, I have a meeting at what they call the Garage Mahal in Fairhope, Alabama for a tech seminar there. So if you want some more information, if you didn't get it in the mailer that I sent out, call me tomorrow or email me and I'll answer. So.
Hey, John, one more clarification. If you lose the ground to the gas gauge, it will go to full scale. Is that right?
On an A.
Oh.
On a B, it goes empty.
Oh, gotcha. That's what I thought. Oh my gosh. All right, good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yep. It works backwards. And on a magnet, when the fuel sending unit loses contact, it goes to hot. It's just a different way of doing electronics.
Yep.
Garages.
Cool. Thank you.
And don't forget to mention your birthday party.
Thank you. My birthday party is coming up thank you, Tony. It's coming up on the 20th. That's not this coming weekend, but the next weekend in Grand Rapids. All MG owners are welcome. So now 49 years in business, although some of those years I really wasn't in business.
We thought you were 49.
Yeah, that's about the size of it. And I really started I took money from someone. The first time I took money to do MG work for a guy, took his pistons out of his engine, put rings on. That was in May of 1971. So I'm over 50 as far as being in the profession, but University Motors was officially opened on the 25th of January, 1975. So this is my 49th year. It's like when's the first MG? First MGs were 1925 until about 2 years ago when they were going to start to have the celebration in 2025. And Norm Ewing, who couldn't get on again tonight, he's from Johannesburg, South Africa. They had the 5th largest corporation in the world, an energy company. They sold energy to Egypt. I mean, it was this huge, massive, successful company, and now they have rolling brown and blackouts in Johannesburg because they can't get enough power even in South Africa. Anyway, Norm and some other people made a stink about it, and so they moved it back to 2023. So when the first Railtons or something or other were badged up as MGs. So anyway, hard to establish exactly the beginning of MG, and it's hard to establish exactly the beginning of University Motors. As I did take out a DBA for University Motors in 1973. But I didn't open my shop until January 75. Anyway.
John, I have something else to show you. I don't know if you can, this is the picture for August on the calendar. Is the many talents of John Twist.
Oh, that's very kind. Oh my God. All right. Look at this.
So
Okay.
I didn't know how good you could see it, but I have inspecting, listening. You had that handle. And then the next one's teaching, and then rebuilding and overdrive. So I'll send the calendar out in a couple of days.
Through the years, yeah.
Yeah, it's just I thought it was the pictures are kind of neat. I thought the way it takes good pictures.
Thanks. Thank you.
And feel free to use them in your advertising if you want. I got a bunch of pictures of you working on cars. So
I don't, because I'm working on the cars instead of the picture. So
well, we'll see what we can find in it. There's half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, send them to me.
Yeah. Well, send them to Marty or send them to me, and I'll get them to Marty. So.
All right.
All right, Sean English, looks like you're standing up, all set to. Yeah.
Go to get in that garage. Go out in the garage, do some work.
Yeah.
It's still day.
Sean's got is that a 37 VA?
Yeah, 1937 VA.
A really, really nice one.
A nice car. I've had many compliments on it. Thank you. Won a couple prizes too. Nobody has seen the SVWs. You know, they're not very many of them around anyhow, even in England.
By the time they got to the Y type, because Sean also.
I got the Y type too.
Was a Y
I'm still
type.
waiting for a part.
They had reduced the number of octagons in the car. You ever counted how many octagons there are in that VA?
No, I have not. I probably should do that. It's
Oh
a good
my God, you'd take it in the afternoon and you'd still miss some.
They're everywhere.
Oh, they're everywhere. They're the door handles, you name it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll get it going. I'll see you later. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we will look forward to tuning in next time. We'll do something having to do with tuning next time, so we get some more people on, more people on the line. Don't forget to make a donation if you haven't already. I really would appreciate it. Anyway, thanks a lot. Safety.
Thanks, John.
Hi, John.
I have a question, but I'll call you tomorrow, John, about rebuilding the engine.
All right. Okay.
Good night, John.
Night, safety new year fast.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks.
I counted 146. I don't know what Doug's got.
Okay.
See you later. Bye.
Okay.